My name is Chris Sullivan, 59, retired firefighter. Yesterday I found my villa listed for sale online. I never agreed to sell it. 2 years ago, I lost my wife, Linda, to cancer. Pancreatic. 13 months from diagnosis to goodbye. I retired early to care for her, spent our savings on treatments that didn't work, and when she passed, I was broken. My daughter Jennifer said I shouldn't live alone in that big house full of memories. She was right. So I gifted her the villa. $780,000 worth of generosity. Life estate arrangement. She gets ownership when I die, but I keep the right to live there. 13 months later, her husband's entire family has moved in. They treat me like a confused old man. They've isolated me from friends, controlled my finances, and apparently convinced a realtor I have dementia. But I don't have dementia. And I still own the right to decide who lives in my house. Let me back up. I spent 32 years with Riverside Fire Department. Started as a rookie at 25, worked my way up to captain. Linda and I bought the villa in 2018 with my pension and her teacher's retirement. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, pool in the back. Our dream home for our golden years. Then came the diagnosis. Linda fought hard. Surgery, chemo, radiation, the works. Our insurance covered most of it, but most of cancer treatment still leaves you with bills. $180,000 in out-of-pocket costs over 2 years. I retired early to care for her. No regrets there. Every dollar went to trying to save her. Every hour went to make her comfortable. When you love someone, you don't count the cost, but losing her broke something in me. The house felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories. I'd find myself talking to empty rooms, setting 2 plates for dinner out of habit. Jennifer noticed. She started visiting more often, bringing her husband Kevin and their 2 kids. Sweet kids, 8 and 10 years old. "Dad," she said one evening last spring, "you don't look good. You're not eating enough. You're not sleeping." She was right. I'd lost 20 pounds. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and walk the empty hallways. "Maybe we should move closer," she suggested. "Help you through this rough patch." That's when Kevin spoke up. Nice guy, construction management. Lost his job 18 months ago when his company downsized. They were facing foreclosure on their own house, a $180,000 mortgage they couldn't handle anymore. "What if we moved in here temporarily?" Kevin asked. "Just until we get back on our feet. We could help Dad with the house, and the kids could spend more time with Grandpa." It sounded reasonable. The villa had plenty of space. I was lonely. They needed help. Family helps family. But then Jennifer said something that should have been a warning. "Actually, Dad, maybe you should consider giving me the house now instead of leaving it in your will. That way I can help manage it properly while you're going through this depression." Depression. That word would come up a lot in the months that followed. I talked to my lawyer, David Brennan. He suggested a life estate arrangement. Jennifer would own the property when I died, but I'd retain the right to live there and control who else could live there as long as I was alive. "It protects both of you," David explained. "She gets security knowing the house will be hers. You get security knowing you can't be forced out." I signed the papers in June. $780,000 worth of generosity, transferred to my daughter. The kids were thrilled. Jennifer cried. Kevin shook my hand and promised they'd take good care of everything. "We'll only stay until we're back on our feet," he assured me. 3 months, maybe 4. That was 13 months ago. What started as Jennifer's family of 4 became 6 people when Kevin's parents, Patricia and Donald, needed a place to stay after their lease ended. Then Kevin's sister Monica moved in with her 2 kids after her divorce. 6 adults and 4 children in my villa. I tried to be understanding. Family goes through hard times. I'd been blessed with good fortune in my career. Sharing seemed like the right thing to do. But something changed over those 13 months. Gradually, I stopped feeling like the homeowner and started feeling like a guest, a tolerated guest. They began making household decisions without consulting me. They changed the internet password and didn't tell me. They rearranged furniture. They took over the master bedroom suite because there are more of them and they needed the space. I moved into the guest room. When my old firefighter buddies wanted to visit, Jennifer would say, "Dad needs quiet time to heal. Maybe another day." When I wanted to hire a house cleaner, Kevin said, "We can handle it, Dad. Save your money." But the house wasn't getting cleaned, and my money was disappearing anyway. The changes happened so gradually, I almost didn't notice them at first. It started with small kindnesses. Jennifer began handling my mail, sorting bills and important documents. "You have enough to worry about, Dad. Let me take care of the paperwork." Kevin started managing the household utilities. "Dad, you shouldn't have to think about electricity bills and internet payments. We've got it covered." Patricia, Kevin's mother, took over grocery shopping. "Chris, honey, you don't need to drive to the store. I know what everyone likes to eat." Within 6 months, I wasn't handling any of my own affairs. They had my bank information for emergencies. They knew my social security number for tax purposes. They had access to my retirement accounts because Jennifer was listed as my financial power of attorney for health-related decisions. I didn't remember signing that particular document, but Jennifer showed me the paperwork. My signature was right there. The isolation happened just as gradually. My friend Tom from the fire department called to invite me for our monthly poker game. I mentioned it to Jennifer. "Dad, you seem so tired lately. Maybe you should rest instead of staying out late." When my neighbor Bob knocked on the door to chat, Monica answered. "Chris is not feeling well today. He's been having some memory issues. Maybe try again next week." Memory issues? I started paying attention to the conversations around me. Little comments, casual observations. Dad forgot he already had lunch. Dad couldn't remember where he put his reading glasses. Dad seemed confused when I explained about the property taxes. The thing is, I hadn't forgotten lunch. I never lost my reading glasses, and I understood the property tax explanation perfectly. But every time I corrected them, they'd exchange these looks. Patient, concerned looks. "Of course, Dad, you're right." But the looks said something different. 8 months in, I noticed the electric bill had tripled. When I asked Kevin about it, he said, "Lots of people in the house now, Dad. Big families use more electricity. $420 a month for electricity seemed excessive, but what did I know? I'd lived alone for 2 years. 10 months in, I wanted to visit Linda's grave on our anniversary. When I went to get my car keys, they weren't in the usual spot." "Where are my keys?" "Dad," Jennifer said gently. "Remember? We talked about this. You've been having some episodes. We think it's safer if someone drives you places." "Episodes? What episodes?" "You got lost coming back from the grocery store last month. You called me crying, said you couldn't remember how to get home. I never got lost. I never called her crying. But Jennifer seemed so certain, so concerned." "Maybe I did forget," I said. That became the pattern. Anytime I questioned something, I was reminded of some incident I couldn't remember, some confusion I'd supposedly experienced, some sign of my declining mental state. 11 months in, I wanted to make a doctor's appointment. I'd been feeling tired, and I thought maybe I needed a physical. "I already scheduled you for next month, Dad," Jennifer said. "Dr. Martinez wants to do some cognitive testing, just routine stuff for someone your age." "I don't want cognitive testing. I want a regular physical." "Dad, we're worried about you. You've been forgetting things, getting confused. It's normal at your age, but we need to make sure you're getting proper care." 12 months in, I decided to call my old lawyer David Brennan to ask some questions about my legal rights regarding the house. When I reached for the phone book, Kevin said, "Who are you calling, Dad?" "My lawyer." "Why do you need a lawyer?" "I just want to ask him about some things." Another one of those looks between Jennifer and Kevin. "Dad, you don't have a lawyer anymore, remember? He retired last year. We told you about this." David Brennan retired? That seemed sudden. But again, maybe I'd forgotten. 13 months in, I was taking a walk around the neighborhood when my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, flagged me down. "Chris, I saw the for sale sign in your yard. I'm so sorry you have to move. Where are you going?" "What sign?" I walked back to the house. There it was. A real estate sign on my front lawn. Listed by Sandra Martinez, premium properties $780,000. I never put my house up for sale. I never talked to any realtor named Sandra Martinez, but there was my address, my property, listed online for $780,000. That's when I knew something was very, very wrong. Let me tell you what $780,000 represents. It's not just money. It's every overtime shift I worked for 32 years. Every holiday I missed with my family because someone else needed rescuing. Every time I ran into a burning building while other people ran out. Linda used to joke that I loved my job more than I loved her. She was wrong, but I understood why she thought it. Fire department schedules aren't family-friendly. I missed Jennifer's school plays, her soccer games, her graduation parties. I was always at the station, or at a fire, or covering for another guy whose kid was sick. Dad works too much, Jennifer would tell her friends. She wasn't wrong. When Jennifer was 16, she wanted a car. All her friends had cars. I was working 3 jobs at the time: the fire department, weekend construction work, and teaching CPR classes at the community college. Linda was substitute teaching, trying to make ends meet. "We can't afford a car right now, honey," I told Jennifer. "Maybe next year." She cried. She slammed doors. She gave me the silent treatment for 2 weeks. So I picked up a 4th job, night security at a warehouse. 4 hours of sleep between shifts. I was exhausted all the time, but I saved up enough to buy Jennifer a used Honda Civic for her 17th birthday. She was so happy that day. Hugged me tight and said, "Thanks, Dad. I know you work hard for us." When Jennifer graduated high school, she wanted to go to the state university. Out-of-state tuition was expensive, but she'd been accepted to their education program. She wanted to be a teacher like her mom. I took out a second mortgage on our first house, worked extra shifts, sold my motorcycle. Linda worked full-time instead of substitute teaching. 4 years later, Jennifer graduated debt-free while her classmates owed $50,000 each in student loans. When Jennifer got married, she wanted a big wedding. 300 guests, live band, open bar, the works. Linda and I had saved up for this since Jennifer was born, but inflation had made everything more expensive than we'd planned. I cashed out half my retirement fund early, paid the penalties, and gave Jennifer the wedding of her dreams. $28,000 for one day. "Dad, you didn't have to do all this," she said at the reception. "You only get married once," I told her. "We wanted it to be perfect." When Kevin lost his job, Jennifer called me crying. "Dad, we might lose the house. Kevin's been unemployed for 6 months. We've burned through our savings. The bank wants $15,000 by next month or they'll start foreclosure proceedings." I drove to the bank that afternoon and transferred $15,000 from my retirement account to theirs. No questions asked. Family helps family. 6 months later, another call. "Dad, Kevin's still having trouble finding work. We need another $10,000 to catch up on mortgage payments." Another trip to the bank. 3 months after that. "Dad, we need money for the kids' school tuition. Private school is expensive, but the public schools in our district aren't very good. $12,000. Every time I said yes. Every time I told myself that's what parents do. You sacrifice for your children. You make sure they have better opportunities than you had. But here's what really hurts. I wasn't just giving Jennifer money. I was giving her my time, my energy, my peace of mind. Every financial crisis became my crisis. Every problem became my problem to solve. Linda noticed before I did. "Chris, honey, you're enabling her," she said one evening after another emergency phone call from Jennifer. "She's 35 years old. Maybe it's time she learned to handle her own problems." "She's our daughter," I said. "If we don't help her, who will?" There's a difference between helping and enabling. You're not teaching her to be independent. You're teaching her that Dad will always bail her out. Linda was right, but I couldn't see it then. I just saw my little girl who needed help. When Linda got sick, Jennifer stepped up. She drove Linda to chemo appointments when I couldn't get off work. She researched treatment options. She held Linda's hand during the scary moments. I was grateful. I thought we'd finally become the close family I'd always wanted. But now I wonder, was Jennifer being helpful, or was she positioning herself? During Linda's final weeks, Jennifer spent a lot of time at the house. She was there when Linda died. She helped me plan the funeral. She handled the paperwork with the insurance company. She was also there when I was at my most vulnerable, when I wasn't thinking clearly, when I was making decisions based on grief instead of logic. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone in this big house," she said a week after the funeral. "It's not healthy. Dad, you're not eating enough. You need people around to take care of you." "Dad, maybe you should consider what Mom would have wanted. She'd want you to be surrounded by family." Jennifer was right about one thing. Linda would have wanted me to be surrounded by family. But Linda also would have wanted me to be respected, to be treated like the head of my own household, to maintain my dignity and independence. $780,000 was my life's work, my contribution to Jennifer's future, my final gift to the daughter I'd spent 35 years trying to provide for. I never imagined she'd use it against me. Part 5. The Decision and Planning. 840th words. The first thing I did was drive to the real estate office. Sandra Martinez was a cheerful woman in her 50s, all smiles and enthusiasm, until I introduced myself. Mr. Sullivan, how wonderful to meet you. Your daughter Jennifer speaks so highly of you. How are you feeling today? How was I feeling? It was an odd question for a real estate agent to ask. I'm fine. I'm here because I saw my house listed for sale. I never authorized that. Sandra's smile flickered. She glanced at some papers on her desk. Oh, Mr. Sullivan, I think there might be some confusion. Your daughter explained that you've been having some memory issues lately. She showed me the power of attorney documents that give her the right to handle your real estate transactions. She showed you what? The power of attorney for your health and financial decisions. It's right here in your file. Sandra handed me a document. My signature was at the bottom, but I didn't remember signing anything that gave Jennifer the right to sell my house. When did I supposedly sign this? According to the date, about 6 months ago. Right around the time you started having those episodes Jennifer mentioned. Episodes. There was that word again. What episodes? Sandra looked uncomfortable. Perhaps you should discuss this with your daughter, Mr. Sullivan. I don't want to overstep, but she's concerned about your well-being, and she feels that selling the house and moving you to a more manageable living situation would be best for everyone. A more manageable living situation? She mentioned a lovely assisted living facility, Sunset Gardens. They specialize in memory care. Memory care. I left the real estate office and drove straight to Sunset Gardens. It was a nice enough place. Clean, professional, expensive. I asked for a tour. Are you looking for yourself or a family member? The administrator asked. I'm doing research. Well, our memory care unit is state-of-the-art. We provide 24-hour supervision for residents with dementia, Alzheimer's, and other cognitive impairments. The cost is $4,800 per month, but most families find it's worth the peace of mind. $4,800 a month. If I lived another 10 years, that would be over $500,000. Coincidentally, about the amount Jennifer would get from selling the villa. I drove home in silence. 6 people were in my living room watching television. My living room. My television. Nobody looked up when I walked in. I went to my room, the guest room I'd been relegated to, and started going through my papers, bank statements, legal documents, anything that might explain how I'd lost control of my own life. That's when I found the first real evidence. In my bank statements from 6 months ago, there was a transfer I didn't remember making. $63,000 from my retirement account to Jennifer's checking account. The memo line said, medical evaluation expenses. What medical evaluation? I looked through my calendar, my appointment cards, my insurance statements. No record of any medical evaluation costing $63,000. I kept digging. More transfers. Smaller amounts, but regular, 500 here, 1,000 there, all with medical-related memo lines. Physical therapy, specialist consultation, cognitive assessment. I'd never had physical therapy. I'd never seen a specialist. I'd never had a cognitive assessment. Someone was systematically draining my retirement fund and disguising it as medical expenses. I needed help, but who could I trust? My phone calls were monitored. My mail was sorted for me. My visitors were screened. Then I remembered something Linda used to say. If you want to know the truth, follow the paper trail. The next morning, while everyone was busy with their routines, I walked to the public library. I used their computer to search for information about elder financial abuse. What I found was sobering. It's more common than people think. Adult children exploiting vulnerable parents, isolation, control, gradual transfer of assets, false claims about mental incompetence. There was a checklist of warning signs. I had almost all of them. I also found information about life estates. The legal structure David Brennan had set up was designed to protect me, but only if I understood my rights. As a life tenant, I had the legal right to control who lived in my property. I could evict unauthorized occupants. I could revoke any power of attorney I'd signed under duress or false pretenses, but I needed a lawyer. I found David Brennan's contact information. He hadn't retired. He was still practicing law, still taking cases. I called him from the library. "Chris, how are you holding up? I heard about all the family living with you now. That must be an adjustment. David, I need to see you, privately. Can you meet me somewhere away from the house?" "Of course. Is everything all right?" "No, it's not. Someone forged my signature on a power of attorney document. Someone's been stealing from my retirement fund. And someone listed my house for sale without my permission." There was a long pause. "Chris, those are serious allegations. Do you have evidence?" "I'm gathering it, but I need to know my legal options. Can you meet me at your office tomorrow morning? I'll clear my schedule." For the first time in months, I felt like I had some control over my situation. But I also knew I had to be careful. If Jennifer and Kevin suspected I was onto them, they might accelerate their plans. I had to move quietly, carefully, strategically, just like fighting a fire. Assess the situation, plan your approach, execute with precision. Part 6. The Power Move. Twist #1 978 976 words. David Brennan's office looked exactly the same as it had when I'd signed the life estate documents 13 months ago. Same oak desk, same law books, same framed diplomas on the wall. But I felt like a different person sitting across from him. "Show me what you found," David said. I spread the bank statements across his desk. Transfer after transfer, all authorized with my supposedly forged signature. $63,000 in 6 months. "The power of attorney document concerns me most," David said, studying the paperwork I'd gotten from Sandra Martinez. "This signature doesn't look quite right." He pulled out the original life estate documents from my file. We compared signatures side by side. "See this loop in the S of Sullivan? On your authentic signatures, it's always consistent. On this power of attorney, it's different, slightly off. So it's forged? I'd bet my law license on it. But we'll need a handwriting expert to prove it in court." David leaned back in his chair. "Chris, what you're describing is textbook elder financial abuse. The isolation, the false medical claims, the gradual asset transfer, the forged documents. It's more common than people realize. What are my options?" "Well, the good news is that the life estate structure I set up gives you significant legal power. You're still the life tenant. You have the right to exclusive possession of the property. You can evict anyone who's living there without your permission." "Even Jennifer?" "Jennifer has remainder rights. She owns the property when you die. But she doesn't have the right to occupy it now unless you permit it. And she certainly doesn't have the right to invite her extended family to live there." David pulled out a legal pad and started writing notes. "Here's what I recommend. First, we file a police report about the forged power of attorney and the unauthorized bank transfers. That's criminal fraud. Second, we prepare formal eviction notices for everyone except Jennifer. You can allow her to stay if you choose. Third, we get that house taken off the market immediately. How long will all this take? The eviction notices can be served tomorrow. Under California law, they have 30 days to vacate. The criminal investigation will take longer. But that's running parallel to the civil remedies. And if they refuse to leave? Then we get a court order. And if they violate that, they'll be arrested for trespassing." David looked at me seriously. "Chris, are you prepared for the family conflict this is going to create? Jennifer isn't going to take this well. Neither is Kevin or his family." I thought about Linda. About the 32 years I spent running into burning buildings to protect strangers. About the life savings I'd worked so hard to accumulate. "I'm tired of being treated like a confused old man in my own house," I said. "I'm tired of having my kindness used against me." "Then let's get your life back." David spent the next 2 hours preparing the legal documents. Eviction notices for Kevin, Patricia, Donald, and Monica Pierce. A cease and desist letter for Sandra Martinez, demanding the house be removed from the market immediately. A revocation of the fraudulent power of attorney. "One more thing," David said. "I'm going to recommend you change all your bank passwords and PINs today, before you go home, and I want you to request statements for all your accounts going back 2 years. We need to see the full scope of the financial abuse." I spent the afternoon at the bank, New passwords, new PINs, new debit cards. The bank manager, Helen Santos, was very helpful once I explained the situation. "Mr. Sullivan, we see this more often than we'd like," she said. "Adult children taking advantage of elderly parents. It's heartbreaking." "I'm not that elderly," I said. "I'm 59. "You're right. I apologize. But the pattern is the same regardless of age. Financial exploitation by trusted family members." Helen printed out 2 years of statements for all my accounts. The picture was worse than I'd thought. Over $90,000 in unauthorized transfers over 24 months, all disguised as medical expenses, home maintenance, or emergency loans. "Can you reverse these transactions?" I asked. "Not automatically. But if you file criminal charges and can prove fraud, we can work with law enforcement to recover the funds." I drove home with a folder full of evidence and legal documents. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Chris Sullivan, retired fire captain. Not some confused old man who needed to be managed. The house was quiet when I walked in. Jennifer was in the kitchen making dinner. Kevin was in the living room with his kids. Everything looked normal, domestic, peaceful. But I could see it differently now. This wasn't a family taking care of a grieving widower. This was a systematic takeover of my life and assets. "Dad, you were gone a long time today," Jennifer said. "Where did you go?" "I had some errands to run." "What kind of errands? Legal business?" Kevin looked up from the television. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine." But Jennifer was studying my face. She knew something had changed. "Dad, you seem upset. Did something happen?" "We'll talk about it tomorrow, Jennifer." "Talk about what?" I looked around the living room, at Kevin's parents on my couch, at Monica's kids playing with toys on my carpet, at the family that had slowly, systematically taken over my house and my life. "I think it's time we had a family meeting," I said. Jennifer and Kevin exchanged one of their looks. The same concerned, patient look they'd been giving each other for months whenever I said something they didn't like. But this time I looked back with something they hadn't seen before, quiet determination. "Tomorrow morning," I said. 10 a.m. Everyone needs to be here. I went to my room and closed the door. The legal documents were safely locked in my briefcase. The bank accounts were secure. The attorney was retained. Phase 1 was complete. I woke up at 6 a.m., like I had every day for 32 years as a firefighter. Old habits. The house was quiet. Everyone else slept until 8 or 9 these days. I made coffee and sat in my kitchen reviewing the legal documents David had prepared. 6 eviction notices, 30 days to vacate, all properly formatted and legally binding. At 10 a.m. sharp, I walked into the living room. Everyone was assembled. Jennifer, Kevin, his parents, Patricia and Donald, his sister Monica with her 2 kids. My living room looked like a courtroom. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "We need to discuss some changes." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out the eviction notices. "Kevin, Patricia, Donald, Monica, you have 30 days to find alternative housing. Here are your formal eviction notices." I handed each of them a document. The silence was absolute. Kevin spoke first. "Dad, what is this about?" "It's about the fact that this is my house and I never gave permission for all of you to live here permanently." Jennifer stood up. "Dad, we talked about this. You said we could stay here. You wanted family around after Mom died." I said Jennifer's family could stay temporarily, not Kevin's entire extended family, not permanently. Patricia, Kevin's mother, looked confused. "Chris, honey, we thought this was all settled. We've been helping you, contributing to the household." "You've been contributing to the household by living here rent-free for 13 months while I pay all the utilities, property taxes, and maintenance costs." Kevin's face was reddening. "We've been taking care of you, Dad, managing your affairs because you've been confused and forgetful." "Confused about what exactly?" "About medications, about appointments, about financial decisions." I pulled out the bank statements. "Confused about these transfers? $63,000 for medical expenses I never incurred?" Jennifer grabbed the papers. "Dad, those were legitimate medical costs. Your cognitive evaluation, your therapy sessions, your medication consultations." "What cognitive evaluation? What therapy sessions? Show me the receipts." "Dad, you're getting upset. This is exactly what we're worried about. You're paranoid and suspicious when we're just trying to help." "I'm paranoid?" I pulled out my phone and called Sandra Martinez, the realtor. "Put it on speaker."
Sandra, this is Chris Sullivan. Can you tell everyone here when my daughter Jennifer first contacted you about selling my house? Oh, hello, Mr. Sullivan. Let me check my notes.
Jennifer first called me about 3 weeks ago. She explained that you'd been having memory issues and that the family had decided it would be best to sell the house and move you to a care facility. I hung up. Memory issues, I repeated. Care facility. Jennifer, when exactly did we decide this? Jennifer was pale now. Dad, we've been discussing this for months. You agreed that Sunset Gardens would be a good fit for you. I've never been to Sunset Gardens, but apparently someone's been telling them I have dementia. Kevin stood up. Okay, this is getting out of hand. Dad, you're clearly having an episode right now. You're confused and agitated. I'm confused. I pulled out the forged power of attorney document. Kevin, can you explain how my signature ended up on this power of attorney that I never signed? Kevin glanced at Jennifer. Another one of those looks. Dad, you signed that 6 months ago. You don't remember because you were having a bad week. We were worried about you making decisions when you weren't thinking clearly. Show me the original document, the one I supposedly signed. What do you mean? I mean the actual piece of paper with my actual signature, not a photocopy, not a scan, the original. Silence. You can't show me the original because it doesn't exist, because someone forged my signature. Jennifer started crying. Dad, why are you doing this? We love you. We're trying to take care of you. By stealing my money? By lying to real estate agents? By planning to put me in a memory care facility? We weren't stealing. We were managing your finances because you weren't capable of doing it yourself. I wasn't capable? Or you needed the money because Kevin's been unemployed for 18 months and you were facing foreclosure? That hit home. Kevin's jaw tightened. Our financial situation has nothing to do with this, he said. Doesn't it? You moved in here supposedly to help me through grief, but really because you needed free housing. You gradually took control of my finances because you needed money. You spread rumors about my mental health because you needed justification for making decisions without my consent. Monica, Kevin's sister, spoke for the first time. Chris, this is crazy. We're family. We're not trying to hurt you. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't steal retirement funds. Family doesn't lie about someone's mental health. I looked around the room at the faces staring back at me, some confused, some angry, some guilty. I spent 32 years running into burning buildings to save people, I said. I retired early to take care of my dying wife. I gave Jennifer this house because I wanted her to have security. I welcomed all of you because I believed family should help family. My voice was steady, controlled. No shouting, no drama. But love doesn't mean being a fool. Jennifer flinched like I'd slapped her. Love doesn't mean letting people take advantage of your grief. Love doesn't mean accepting lies and theft because they come from people you trust. I stood up and faced my daughter. Jennifer, you can stay. This is your inheritance, and someday it will be completely yours. But these other arrangements end now. Kevin's family needs to find somewhere else to live. Dad, please, Jennifer whispered. Don't do this. Don't break up our family. I'm not breaking up our family. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Kevin stood up abruptly. This is bullshit. We've done nothing but help you, and this is how you repay us? How I repay you? I looked at him calmly. Kevin, you've lived in my house rent-free for 13 months. You've used my utilities, eaten my food, and accessed my bank accounts. How exactly have I failed to repay you? We've been taking care of you. No. You've been taking care of yourselves at my expense. I walked to the front door and opened it. You have 30 days. I suggest you start looking for apartments. One by one, they filed out of the living room. Patricia was crying. Donald looked shell-shocked. Monica was already making phone calls. Kevin stopped at the door. You're going to regret this, old man. You're going to end up alone and miserable. I looked at him steadily. I'd rather be alone with my dignity than surrounded by people who lie to me. After they left, Jennifer and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Dad, I never meant for things to go this far. But they did go this far. I was scared. We were going to lose everything. I thought you wouldn't mind helping us. Helping is one thing, Jennifer. Stealing is another. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. What happens now? She asked. Now we find out if we can rebuild trust. or if this is where our relationship ends. The choice, I told her, was entirely hers. 3 days later, David Brennan called with news that made my stomach drop. "Chris, we need to meet. I've been digging deeper into your financial records, and I found something troubling." His office felt different this time, more serious, more urgent. "What did you find?" David spread out documents across his desk. Bank statements, investment records, insurance papers. The $63,000 in fraudulent transfers was just the beginning. I found evidence of a much larger scheme. He pointed to a life insurance policy I'd forgotten about, a policy Linda and I had taken out 20 years ago. "Someone changed the beneficiary on your life insurance last year. Instead of Jennifer being the sole beneficiary, it now lists her as 50% and Kevin as 50%. I never authorized that change." "There's more. Someone also took out a reverse mortgage on this property 3 months ago. Do you know what that means?" I felt the room spinning. "No." A reverse mortgage allows the borrower to receive payments based on the home's equity. The loan becomes due when the borrower dies or moves out permanently. Someone borrowed $200,000 against your house. $200,000? The money went into an account jointly owned by Jennifer and Kevin. They've been using it to make payments on that California property they were looking at. David handed me more papers. Here's the really disturbing part. The reverse mortgage application includes a letter from a doctor stating that you have moderate dementia and require full-time care. The letter is dated 4 months ago. "What doctor?" "I haven't seen any doctor." "Dr. Sarah Chen, geriatric psychiatrist. According to her letter, you've been her patient for 8 months. I stared at the document. "I've never heard of Dr. Sarah Chen." "I called her office. She remembers you quite well. Says your daughter Jennifer brought you in for multiple appointments. Says you were clearly suffering from memory loss and poor judgment." The room was silent, except for the sound of my heart pounding. "David, I've never been to see any psychiatrist. I've never had a conversation with Dr. Sarah Chen." "Then someone has been impersonating you, which is identity theft, which is a federal crime." He pulled out more documents. "There's more. Someone filed paperwork to have Jennifer appointed as your legal guardian. The court date is scheduled for next month." "Guardian? What does that mean?" "If Jennifer becomes your legal guardian, she gains control over all your financial and medical decisions. You would essentially lose the right to make choices about your own life." I felt sick. "How is this possible?" "The petition includes testimonies from 3 witnesses, Kevin Pierce, Patricia Pierce, and Dr. Sarah Chen, all stating that you're mentally incompetent and require supervised care." David leaned forward. "Chris, they weren't just stealing your money. They were building a legal case to have you declared incompetent. If that guardianship goes through, Jennifer would have the right to sell your house, move you to a care facility, and control every aspect of your life." "Even though the house is under a life estate?" "A legal guardian can override those protections if the court determines you're mentally incompetent." I sat back in my chair, trying to process the scope of the betrayal. So the plan was to have me declared incompetent, sell the house, pocket the money, and put me in a care facility. That appears to be the plan, yes? And Jennifer was part of this from the beginning. Based on the evidence, yes. The guardianship petition was filed by Jennifer herself. I thought about our conversation 3 days ago. Jennifer crying, saying she never meant for things to go this far. Asking what happens now. She'd been lying to me even then. What are my options? We fight the guardianship petition aggressively. We present evidence that you're mentally competent. We expose the fraud, the identity theft, the forged documents. We press criminal charges. Criminal charges against Jennifer? Chris, your daughter participated in a systematic scheme to defraud you of hundreds of thousands of dollars and strip you of your legal rights. This isn't a family misunderstanding. This is organized elder abuse. I walked to David's window and looked out at the city. People going about their normal lives, unaware that families could betray each other so completely. "There's something else," David said quietly. "I found the California property they were planning to buy. It's already under contract. The closing date is next month, right after the scheduled guardianship hearing. They were that confident it would work. They had it all planned out. Guardianship hearing, house sale, your institutionalization, their move to California, a complete life restart funded by your assets. I turned back to face David. What happens if we press criminal charges? Jennifer and Kevin could face multiple felonies: fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, forgery. They could go to prison. And if we don't? They'll likely try again. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. People who commit this level of fraud don't usually stop unless they're forced to stop. I thought about Jennifer as a little girl, teaching her to ride a bike, helping her with homework, walking her down the aisle at her wedding. I thought about Linda's funeral, Jennifer holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. I thought about the villa I'd worked 32 years to afford, the retirement I'd earned, the dignity I'd almost lost. Press the charges, I said. David nodded. It's the right decision. Not just for you, but for other elderly people who might become their next targets. Their next targets? Chris, this kind of scheme doesn't usually happen just once. These weren't desperate people who made one bad decision. This was a sophisticated, long-term plan to systematically strip you of your assets and autonomy. That takes a certain kind of person. I signed the necessary paperwork authorizing criminal charges, identity theft, elder fraud, forgery, conspiracy. As I walked out of David's office, I realized something had shifted inside me. The grief, the guilt, the confusion of the past 13 months had been replaced by something clearer. Disappointment, but also relief. For the first time in over a year, I knew exactly who I was dealing with. Not confused family members trying to help. Not well-meaning children making mistakes. People who had decided my life was worth less than their financial convenience. The truth hurt. But it also set me free. That evening, I sat alone in my villa for the first time in 13 months. Really alone. Jennifer had packed a bag and gone to stay with friends after our conversation. Kevin's family was scrambling to find temporary housing. The house felt enormous and quiet. I walked through each room slowly, like I was seeing it for the first time. The master bedroom where Linda and I had shared 30 years of marriage, where she died holding my hand. Kevin's family had been using it as their primary suite, treating our wedding photos like decorations they could rearrange or remove. The kitchen where Linda had cooked thousands of meals, where she'd taught Jennifer to make her grandmother's apple pie recipe. Patricia had reorganized all the cabinets, putting things in places that made sense to her but felt foreign to me. The living room where Linda and I had watched movies, argued about politics, planned our retirement. Monica's kids had been using it as their playroom, leaving toys scattered across furniture Linda had carefully selected. In each room, I found small signs of disrespect. Not malicious, perhaps, but thoughtless. The assumption that my preferences, my memories, my way of living didn't matter as much as their convenience. I understood something then that I hadn't before. This wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about being seen as a human being with valid thoughts, feelings, and rights. About the difference between caring for someone and managing them. My phone rang. Tom, my old partner from the fire department. Chris, I heard through the grapevine that there's been some drama with your family situation. You doing okay? I almost said, fine, automatically. The way you do when people ask how you're doing, and you don't want to burden them with the truth. Instead, I told him everything. Tom listened without judgment, asking clarifying questions but never offering simplistic advice. Jesus, Chris, that's a lot to deal with. How are you holding up? I'm angry, I said, but I'm also relieved. I spent months thinking I was losing my mind, forgetting things, becoming confused. Finding out it was deliberate manipulation actually feels better than thinking I was developing dementia. That makes sense. It's easier to deal with external betrayal than internal breakdown. The hardest part is Jennifer. I keep thinking about her as a little girl, you know? I keep wanting to believe this was Kevin's idea and she just got swept along. But the evidence suggests otherwise? The evidence suggests she was the mastermind. The guardianship petition, the doctor visits, the financial planning. She wasn't a victim of Kevin's scheme. She was the architect of it. Tom was quiet for a moment. You know what this reminds me of? Remember that warehouse fire on Maple Street? The one where the owner had been slowly removing safety equipment to save money. I remember. We kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he didn't know the sprinkler system was disabled. Maybe he didn't realize the fire exits were blocked. Maybe he was just ignorant, not negligent. Until we found the insurance paperwork showing he'd been planning to burn it down for months. Right, Sometimes people do terrible things for money, even people we thought we knew. After Tom hung up, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She'd been the one to tell me about the for sale sign. "Chris, I'm so glad you called. I've been worried about you. Some of the neighbors have been talking." "What kind of talking?" "Well, we noticed you stopped going on your morning walks. You stopped checking your mail. When we'd wave hello, you seemed distant, different." "That's because I was being told you all thought I was developing dementia, that I shouldn't be out walking alone." "What? Who told you that?" "Jennifer. She said the neighbors were concerned about my memory, that I was getting confused and lost." Mrs. Chen laughed, but not unkindly. "Chris, you're one of the sharpest people on this street. You've been helping me program my TV remote for 2 years. If you have dementia, we all have dementia." "So no one was concerned about my mental state?" "The only thing we were concerned about was that you seemed isolated, like you were being kept away from people, but we figured that was your choice while you were grieving." Another piece of the manipulation puzzle. They hadn't just isolated me from family and friends. They'd convinced me the isolation was for my own good, that people were worried about me, that I was becoming a burden or embarrassment. "Mrs. Chen, if you notice an elderly neighbor becoming isolated, what would you do?" "I'd check on them directly. I'd ask if they needed help. I'd invite them for coffee or dinner. I certainly wouldn't assume they were incompetent." "Would you ever assume their family knew what was best for them?" "Not automatically, no. Sometimes families have their own agendas. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from." After she hung up, I sat in my quiet house and thought about that phrase. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from. It applied to more than just my situation. It applied to every elderly person whose family had decided they knew better. Every vulnerable adult whose relatives had prioritized convenience over dignity. Grief made me vulnerable, not weak. Trust made me accessible, not naive. Love made me generous, not foolish. The difference matters. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in the same courtroom where Jennifer's guardianship petition should have been heard. Instead, we were there for her arraignment on fraud charges. Jennifer pled guilty to elder financial abuse, identity theft, and forgery. Kevin pled guilty to the same charges, plus conspiracy. They were both sentenced to 2 years probation, ordered to pay full restitution, and required to complete community service at a local senior center. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Hend Chris, had some pointed words for them. "Elder abuse is one of the most cowardly crimes that comes before this court," she said. "You targeted someone who loved you, who trusted you, who was vulnerable because of grief. You exploited that vulnerability for personal gain." She looked directly at Jennifer. "Your father spent 32 years risking his life to protect strangers. He deserved better from his own daughter." Jennifer cried during the sentencing. Real tears, I think. Whether from remorse or from getting caught, I'll never know. Kevin looked angry throughout the proceedings. Even when accepting his plea agreement, he maintained that they'd been helping me and that I was ungrateful. Some people never accept responsibility for their choices. The restitution covered most of my financial losses. The reverse mortgage was canceled because it had been obtained through fraud. My life insurance policy was corrected to reflect my actual wishes. More importantly, the court case established a clear public record. If anyone ever questions my mental competency again, there's documentation proving that multiple professionals found me completely competent to manage my own affairs. David Brennan helped me set up better financial protections, new bank accounts with strong password protection, a revocable trust that gives me full control during my lifetime but protects assets from future manipulation. Clear documentation of my wishes for medical and financial decisions. The goal, David explained, is to make it impossible for anyone to claim authority over your life without your explicit, witnessed consent. I also made some personal changes. I reconnected with my firefighter friends. Tom and I have coffee every Tuesday morning. We talk about old cases, current events, and the challenges of retirement. It turns out I wasn't as isolated as I'd been led to believe. People had been reaching out. Their calls and visits had just been intercepted. I started volunteering at the senior center where Jennifer and Kevin were doing their community service. It's satisfying work, helping other elderly people navigate financial decisions and recognize signs of potential abuse. I've also met some interesting people. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, introduced me to her book club. I'm dating a retired teacher named Carol, who makes me laugh and shares my love of old movies. The villa feels like my home again. I've redecorated some rooms, replaced some furniture, and created new memories in spaces that had been occupied by people who didn't respect them. But I've also made some difficult decisions. Jennifer and I have had limited contact since the trial. She sent several letters apologizing and asking for forgiveness. Kevin, meanwhile, has moved to Arizona and cut all contact with our family. I've read Jennifer's letters carefully. Some of her remorse seems genuine, but I've also noticed she continues to minimize her role, blame Kevin for pressuring her, and focus on how the consequences have affected her, rather than acknowledging the full impact of her choices. Trust, once broken this completely, may never be fully restored. But I'm open to the possibility of a relationship with Jennifer if she demonstrates real accountability and change over time. The most important thing I've learned is this: setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. Love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting. Family relationships, like all relationships, need mutual respect to be healthy. I'm not the same man I was 13 months ago when I signed that life estate document. Grief and betrayal changed me. But I'm not broken. I'm not bitter. I'm not afraid. I'm clearer about my values, firmer about my boundaries, and more selective about my trust. This house has new memories now. Better memories. Memories of standing up for myself, of fighting for my dignity, of refusing to be managed, manipulated, or dismissed. Memories of learning that vulnerability doesn't equal weakness, and that asking for help doesn't mean surrendering control. If this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't betrayal, it's self-respect. If you're caring for an aging parent or relative, remember that protection shouldn't look like control. Love should look like respect. And if you're an older adult who feels like you're losing autonomy to well-meaning family members, remember this: you have the right to make your own decisions about your life, your money, and your living situation until the day you die. That right doesn't disappear because you're grieving, because you're lonely, or because your family thinks they know better. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to say no, and mean it.